All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Thank you for joining us for our live webinar, Finding Balance, Life, Work, and DAR. I'm Susan Gillette-Meir, National Vice Chairman of the webinars for the DAR Leadership Training Committee, and I'm joined by Susan Metzger, National Chair of the DAR Leadership Training Committee for the Young Administration. Hi, Susan.
Hi, Susan. How are you?
Very good. Hey, this webinar tonight is really an inspiration to so many women listening. I know it's going to be an inspiration to me, and I've already seen it. But for those of you who don't know, Susan Metzger is our fearless leader of this committee, whose ideas and inspiration guide all of us on the team with each webinar that we do. Our team consists of 3 people: Christina Ramos, another National Vice Chairman, myself, Susan Meir, and Susan Metzger, who volunteer to produce these webinars. Now, Christina couldn't make it with us this evening due to another commitment, but when our team gets together to work on webinars, it's very lively, and we have many ideas flowing. Wouldn't you agree, Susan?
I would agree, definitely.
And I always have to laugh because there's Susan Metzger and Susan Meir, and we can't even say Susan M because they
No,
always get mixed up.
we're often confused by that.
That's right. So when Susan Metzger said she wanted to produce tonight's webinar about finding balance, it was a big hit with our team because we are all very busy women. How many of our listeners tonight are very, very busy women? I'm sure a lot of them are. So Susan, what was your inspiration for creating tonight's webinar?
Well, about a month ago, I started a new job, and so it really was an opportunity for me to step back and talk with my husband and my family and about how I was going to make sure that my new work responsibilities fit in with my life commitments and making sure I still had the time I wanted to commit to DAR. And so I started going through the list of things of how I find balance, and I thought, well, those might be things that other members might be struggling with too, and so I wanted to share them.
Yeah, that's right. And we were talking earlier about our roles in DAR, and on the state level, you have a role as well. What's your level in the state?
Sure. Just like you, I serve as a district director, so I have the opportunity of traveling throughout Northwest Kansas and visiting with chapters who have varying levels of membership, but all of their members are really active, and so I see them in their own chapters implementing some of the things we'll share with you tonight about how they make sure that their members stay active but don't get burnt out.
Yeah, and I do get the question a lot. Wow, how do you do so much in DAR? And do you have any life at home and things like that? And I too sometimes struggle with finding a balance. And there's going to be some great points tonight, as again, as I've seen the work that's going to be presented. There's some really great points that I think our listeners can take away from this webinar and say, hey, I need to start doing that to find more balance.
Indeed, and I bet, I'll mention this in a few slides in, but I'm sure that the ladies listening tonight also have things to share that would be helpful for other members. So I see some of you chatting in the question box. I encourage you to do that through tonight's webinar. And tell us about your busy life with DAR and your regular life, and then also tips that you might want to share with the other members on how you find that balance. And we'll share those at the end of the webinar.
Yeah, you're right, and I think that we're going to find there's a couple different types of listeners tonight, some that are struggling to find that balance and are looking for ideas, and others that have found it in their own way, but have realized that some of the other people maybe they're working with in the DAR, that way might not work for those other people, and they're looking for more ideas to share. So, and I know, again, as district director in Pennsylvania, I'm really excited to take some of these ideas and share it with my women and really hope to enhance things. So I'm really excited. This is going to be great.
Absolutely. Shall we get started?
Yes, I do want to remind everyone, though, that, again, this is live and that we have a question and answer session at the end. And as Susan Metzger said, we are going to ask you to be very busy in the question box tonight, and she'll talk a little more about that. But we will come back to all the questions and answers at the end of the webinar. All right, Susan?
Great. So as we said, the topic of this webinar is finding balance between life, work, and DAR. So during this presentation, I'm going to share my ideas for not only striking a balance among life's many activities for ourselves, but also tips that chapters and state leaders can employ to help our members find that balance. So this is my image of DAR. DAR members are busy women, and I think we are super women. Look around your own chapter. Your members are mothers, they're grandmothers, career women, soldiers, and somehow still manage to collectively contribute more than 4 million hours of volunteer service in our communities each year. We are skilled at finding balance among life, work, and DAR. Balance does not necessarily mean simply equalizing our time and energy amongst our various life activities. It's unlikely that we spend an equal amount of time at work, with our family and friends, and with our activities such as DAR. And it's probably true to say that our time allocations change from month to month, especially when new life events present themselves, a new job, the birth of a child or grandchild, or elderly parents that need care. Life is not static, it is dynamic. Balance in one season is not the same as the next, and balance for one person is not the same as balance for another. Creating the capacity to balance in the changing circumstances of life is not only important for our personal health and well-being, it is key in developing and maintaining great DAR members. Fostering a balance among DAR and our members' other commitments will help avoid burnout and will ensure our members not only stay members, but remain happy, active members. In developing this webinar, I spent time reflecting on my own chapter, thinking about how the busy women in my chapter successfully managed to strike a balance among their careers, families, and other community activities, all while contributing in their own ways to DAR. I also drew upon tips and ideas presented in blogs and online articles, as well as 2 published books, Life Matters by Roger and Rebecca Merrill, and Thrive by Ariana Huffington. I've come up with 6 guidelines for finding balance among work, life, and DAR. These are based on my own observation and experience. Perhaps you have some additional tips for making time and space for DAR in your life. Please share those tips during this webinar by typing them in the question box. We will share some of those tips following the webinar. The 6 balance guidelines that will frame this webinar are dedicate, communicate, coordinate, regulate, delegate, and decline. The first guideline for balancing life's demands with our service to DAR is to dedicate. Dedicate a portion of your schedule, skills, and talents to the work of this society. No matter how busy we may be, we all find the time to accomplish the highest demands of our day. Sure, if we had more hours in the day or could clone ourselves, we may pick up more activities or accomplish more tasks. But the reality is we're given one body and 24 hours each day. That means that both consciously and unconsciously, we tend to prioritize and spend our time with the people and activities that we value the most. As active members in DAR, you have demonstrated that being a member is important to you. You have chosen DAR as an area of your life to which you want to dedicate yourself. At the chapter level, recognize that your members are there for the same reason you are, because they have chosen to dedicate a portion of their time and energy to DAR. One way to maintain that dedication is to periodically reconnect to the mission of the society. It is easy to get lost in the details of activities and the function of a chapter, completing reports, collecting dues, scheduling meetings. As a chapter, step back on occasion and reflect on the power of an all-woman service organization dedicated to promoting patriotism, preserving American history, and securing America's future through better education for children. Spend a few minutes at a chapter meeting asking your members to share why DAR is important to them. What we are dedicated to is not static. As a member, periodically review your commitments and evaluate whether you are spending your time in the ways you value most. The second guideline for finding balance in our busy DAR lives is to communicate. Our family and friends are key to helping us maintain balance among our work and life responsibilities and our volunteer commitments. Communicating why DAR is important to you and what you enjoy most about the organization with your family, friends, and even coworkers will promote understanding. If they are aware of the significance of the organization to you, they will be more likely to help accommodate time spent with DAR in your schedule. Bring your family to a DAR event. Talk about your latest chapter event in the break room at work. Communication can play a key role in striking that life, work, and DAR balance. If you can, involve your family in any decisions you make about taking on more commitments. Review your voluntary roles each year, and remember that when you first took on a position, your commitments may have looked very different to you than how they are now. If you can't say yes to something now, you may be able to return to it at a later date. The third balance guideline is to coordinate, or basic time management. As Dr. Seuss shared through The Cat in the Hat, how did it get late so soon? It's right before it's afternoon. December is here before it's June. My goodness, how the time has flown. How did it get so late so soon? Ever feel like there just aren't enough hours in the day? Time management refers to coordinating time effectively so that the right time is allocated to the right activity. For the most part, DAR has a regular and predictable schedule of events each year. This is true at the chapter, state, and national level. Your chapter's yearbook includes a list of meetings for the upcoming year. Your state society probably posts a calendar of your state's activities and deadlines. The members section of the NSDAR website also includes a calendar. Check out the DAR events and deadlines and chart them out along with your other life events and commitments. It is okay to not be able to attend all events. Prioritize the activities that fit best in your schedule and are the most important to you. The next guideline in finding and maintaining balance among life, work, and DAR is to regulate or pace yourself. Are you a new member to DAR, or have you recently taken on a new leadership position? It is easy to get so excited about the newness of the membership or role that we expend all of our energy early in the term. Be sure to harness your energy so you can sustain it for a longer period of time. Don't try to do too much at once. Remember, you have a period of time to fulfill your role, whether you have committed to organizing one event or to a leadership term that lasts 2 to 3 years. It is important to pace yourself accordingly. Most volunteer leaders commit to a role because they are passionate about the cause, and that passion can fuel a lively energy. You will benefit DAR more if you can harness that energy for the duration of your commitment and not just for the first 3 months. One way you can do this is by reminding yourself that you cannot, and in fact should not, do everything immediately. So recognize that and stop trying. Another helpful way to pace yourself goes back to the communicate guideline. Find an accountability partner who can alert you when your momentum starts to overrule your ability to balance life, work, and DAR. Slowing down can actually make us more productive. Learn to value the role of rest in your busy life. In her book, Thrive, Ariana Huffington shares the results of a study conducted by researchers at Stanford University. The study evaluated the performance of Stanford swimmers and basketball players, comparing several weeks of normal college athletes' schedule, followed by a schedule that included naps and full nights of sleep. The study demonstrated that the athletic performance of the students actually increased with the intentional focus on rest. These results may not seem surprising, but we could still learn a thing or two from the results. It is okay to rest. Take time for yourself. You will be more efficient. You'll be a more efficient mother, grandmother, worker, and definitely a more efficient DAR member as a result. The next guideline for balancing life, work, and DAR is to delegate. Leadership roles, even if voluntary, can feel isolating. Unfortunately, we often create that isolation ourselves because we believe leadership means doing it yourself. It is important to remember you are not alone. Don't hesitate to use a variety of resources that surround you. This may include fellow committee members, mentors and friends, past leaders in the society, new members, or even knowledge from books and articles. Depending on the level of your leadership role, be sure to collaborate with the other members in bringing action to ideas. Also remember that for some roles, the regent, for example, your job really is to focus on the bigger picture and strategy, not on directly implementing each idea. In these situations, collaborative delegation is necessary. So what does that mean? Empower others to work with you on the implementation by asking for help or appointing specific tasks based on a member's role and strengths or interests. And always offer to serve as a resource for them. Whether delegating or collaborating, it is critical to set clear expectations for both yourself and those you are working with, and then hold each other accountable to those by checking in periodically. Often we are too hard on ourselves, typically because our passion is driving our service. Give yourself permission to ask for help and advice, to make mistakes during your term, and to acknowledge both your learning opportunities and your achievements. It is important as a leader to be a role model and to set a positive and productive culture, and giving permission is critical in helping establish that. The final guideline for finding balance in life, work, and DAR is to decline or just say no. It's not always easy to say no to a worthy and interesting request for help, but try to use your head and heart when deciding. First of all, ask yourself whether it's something you feel passionate about and are genuinely interested in. Check exactly what commitment is required of you and for how long. Think about whether this position is going to add value to your life now. Does it make you feel positive and excited? Make a list of all the things you're already doing on a voluntary basis. Will you need to make some changes? If it feels like it's going to be too much to take on, then say no. Ask your chapter or state leaders to contact you again at a different time. If it feels like a fantastic way to serve others or do something you've always wanted to do, then say yes and schedule away. If you can't decide on the spot, say you need to evaluate your schedule and visit with your friends and family before making that commitment. Most importantly, don't feel guilty if you can't say yes to a request. There will most likely be someone else who can. Saying no may open up a great opportunity for another member. As chapter and state leaders, you can help members with this last guideline. You know what they say, no good deed goes unpunished. We tend to reward the dedication of our members by asking them to take on more. We can help our fellow DAR members in balancing their many life commitments by being conscious of how much we ask them to do for DAR. Share the workload of a chapter, including leadership and committee chair positions, with many members. And finally, never underestimate the power of saying thank you. Express appreciation for the time and energy DAR members in your chapter and state share. Finding balance among life, work, and DAR is not a perfect science and will not look the same for all members. But in my own experience, these are my guidelines for finding that balance. Dedicate yourself to the activities most important to you. Communicate those priorities to your friends and family. Coordinate your many life events to ensure proper time management. Regulate your time and enthusiasm so you don't get burned out. Delegate activities and responsibilities to others. And finally, decline. It is okay to just say no. I hope that you found some of these ideas shared in this webinar helpful as you look to find balance in your own life and in your chapter. As I mentioned before, the 6 guidelines for finding balance that I shared in this presentation are based on my own experience and observation. And I hope some of you have shared some of your ideas during this webinar. So let's take a few minutes to share your ideas with the other attendees. So Susan, will you come back and join me, and let's take a look at what our members have shared with us tonight.
Hey, you know what, before we do that, I do want to make one comment.
Great.
I found myself, as you're going through the webinar, sitting here listening, shaking my head, yes, yes. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are also doing that. And I also noticed that, as I'm going to flip back here to this previous slide, I also noticed that when I'm looking at this list of dedicate, communicate, coordinate, regulate, delegate, and decline, I can spot where my weaknesses are. And I wonder if that's something that our ladies tonight should maybe take a look at, because you might be able to coordinate very well and dedicate yourself to things very well. But in terms of, for example, my regulate is my weakest out of this whole list.
Yes.
I get excited. I get very excited, and I start running with stuff full speed, and then you realize you have 3 years to something, and how do you keep that full speed up? It's hard.
You bet. And for me,
Difficult.
delegate is probably my hardest one. So it's good to take an intentional focus on those ones that are the hardest for you.
Yeah, and actually that's what I'm thinking. You know, now that I've really taken a step back and looked at this webinar, I'm realizing that maybe I should really pinpoint my weaknesses and work on those, and then that will help me find a little more balance.
True.
Yeah.
So let's take a look at some of the ideas shared with us this evening. Here's one that I really like. It says, if you want something done, ask a busy person. We may be too busy mentoring others who come along to work alongside. So I think that's true. You know, often the people that are doing the most, we have quite a bit to learn from on how they're doing it well.
Yes. Here's one from Alice Ridgway about, she's saying just really good point about being clear when you can't accept a new role or responsibility. And once upon a time we were told never say no to an offer to serve because we would never get asked again. But, you know, we have limits, and sometimes we do have to say no so that we're not overextending ourselves.
Very good. So this one I think is really creative. It's a longer one, but I want to read it because I think it's really clever. So Katie Goldberg shares with us that she has a full-time job and a part-time job helping her husband. She goes to graduate school. She has 2 children in college. She plays music in a band, and she has a new dog. So she uses her left hand to remind herself of her priorities. Her thumb is her family. Her pointer finger is her paid work. Her middle finger is for herself, doing things like exercise and reading. Her ring finger is for her schoolwork, and her pinky is everything else. So when I'm overwhelmed, I look at my hand. Sometimes I just can't fit everything in, and sometimes that is DAR. Sometimes it's music. I'm very honest with my officers and sometimes tell prospective members that they might not hear from me for a week or 2 about an application. And I tell people with that their requests are important to me, but I have to fit them in with my priorities. And she says, because of that, everyone's been very wonderful and completely understanding. I think that one's really clever.
Yeah, that is. You know, and I'd like to actually see that again. That's really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of women on here that are talking about their growth in their chapter. For example, Donna Cohen's saying how they have tremendous growth recently with 33% growth, and they're having trouble finding balance in their chapter. And sometimes it leaves, you know, people being overextended and such. Boy, that's a tough one. Susan, do you have any recommendations for something like that?
That is really good. Let's see. I wonder if some others would like to weigh in on Donna's comments too, because I'm sure that they've all kind of tackled this too. So that's the comment.
You know what I'm thinking? Here's another thing I'm thinking is that a lot of times, if you just present the need to your chapter members, a lot of them will step up.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we have those members that are so busy looking and someone says, oh, don't ask her, she's too busy. But it may be that if you present it as, hey, we have a need for some people to be hostesses, we have a need for people to start stepping up and serve as officers, there may be some people that would surprise you and step up. Yeah.
Very true.
So, and I think that falls under your delegate category.
Very true. And I also remember, you know, when I first took on some leadership responsibilities, both in my chapter and my state, I really appreciate the people that asked me to take those roles on, because I'm not sure I would have felt confident as a fairly new member volunteering for those. So really think about some of your newest members that may be quietly sitting in the back of the room, not feeling like they're ready to serve, because sometimes if you ask them to, they are ready.
And here's another comment by Heidi Hayat. I might not be pronouncing her name correctly, but she said, here's a tip. It's not a contest. We all have something to contribute.
Very good.
And that's a great statement. And that kind of goes along with, you may not have volunteered for something, but if someone asks you, you certainly would contribute your time and energy to DAR. And it's true, sometimes it's very intimidating for the new person to see someone who's been a chairman for 3 different terms, and they'd like to help. And we all have value in our, in fact, I always laugh because it is a social organization as well.
That's
And
very true.
People join to be social and to feel a part of the group, not only just for the mission statement of historical preservation, patriotism, and education.
You bet. So a couple of our members have also shared other resources that they like to refer to. Alice Ridgway also has some information from Ariana Huffington, who gave a TED Talk actually about sleep. And I am a napper. I love rest. I find it very valuable. So Alice, I'm going to check out that link, and when we share the questions from tonight's webinar, we'll be sure to include that so that our other attendees could enjoy that TED Talk as well.
Yeah. Susan, it's funny. I'm a very high energy person. Anyone who knows me knows that I go, go, go when I'm turned on. But
Right.
when I actually, go down for the count at night, I sleep. And I think that might be a real positive for me, is that I make sure I get sleep at night. And people say, how do you keep going? I get sleep. That's
Yeah.
the number one thing I say, for sure.
Very good. I see 3 comments in a row that all complement each other. When you asked about which one of these is the most difficult, it really seems like saying no and delegating are the things that are the most challenging for our attendees tonight. And one of our members had asked, well, can you give some examples about delegating? And it was followed up right by a comment from Mary Williams, who said that saying no opened a door for another member for her, and she found someone who would love to do a job she wasn't comfortable with for this year, and she's going to do it this following year. So I think that's a great positive part of saying no, that it really is okay because it opens up doors for other members.
Oh, yeah. Here's one from Lucina Verish. She's saying, I used a shared Google Calendar so my family can all see what DAR and personal appointments are on the calendar. And that's using some technology there. We don't have a Google Calendar in our family, but we have a big one on the refrigerator, and everything goes on the calendar. And we have the joke, if it's not on the calendar, you can't do it.
That's right. No varying from that.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, these are all such wonderful comments, and after tonight's webinar, we'll also make sure we can go through these and hopefully post them with our webinar too, so that you can go back and see the comments that we weren't able to share online with you tonight. So lots of great ideas, and obviously a lot of enthusiasm for this topic, because we are all busy Superwomen DAR members.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Definitely.
So with that, I really appreciate everyone's time tonight joining us, and I hope you found value in the information that we shared on finding balance between life, work, and DAR, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your busy evening.
Right. Thank you, Susan, so much.
Thank you. Good night.